All right, let's talk Las Vegas Raiders. Training camp is right around the corner. Football is finally back, or at least it's very, very close to returning. Exciting time for the Raiders. Exciting time for any team in the National Football League. This Las Vegas squad, and we've covered it this entire offseason. Everyone has made a lot of big time moves across the board. But when you look in two areas specifically and break down the data in two sectors, the Raiders really focused on this offseason. It's clear they're poised for a massive leap forward in 2025. People aren't paying attention to this, but I guarantee you they will in short order. We'll break all that down in just 1 second. But first, I'm Nick. That is Andrew. And this is Saturday Morning Inspection. All right, the Las Vegas Raiders, of course, this offseason made just a ton of massive moves, hiring Pete Carroll, of course, John Spytek, new general manager, Tom Brady getting involved, a lot of additions through free agency, a lot of trades, of course, working through the draft as well across the board. Made a lot of big-time moves to improve this roster, put them in a great position for the 2025 season. They did it across the board, offense, defense, special teams, really just great offseason, undeniably so. But when you look at two sectors the Raiders really focused on, we're talking about, of course, the passing game and the rushing attack, quarterback and running back, if you're going to name the positions respectively. This was the two areas that obviously the Raiders were very bad at last season, but they made a concerted effort to really allocate a lot of resources to this offseason. Now, I know a lot of people are going to say, of course, right? Those are two very important positions, but actually they're even more important than people realizing, more important than people realize when you look at how closely related winning and winning at a high level is in the National Football League to being very good in not just one of those areas, but both. So we'll break that down in just 1 second. But let's pull up what the Raiders did this offseason at these two areas and compare them to what they look like in 2024 based on the data courtesy of Pro Football Focus. So here in our first graphic, we got the Raiders rushing and passing grades. You can see 2024 on the left. You can see projected 2025 on the right. Rushing grade in blue, passing grade in red. Now, in terms of the projections, the passing grade is obviously with some math applied, some adjustments to Geno Smith's performance with the Seattle Seahawks over the past couple seasons. We factored in his performance, weighted it against the Raiders roster and their strategies and all that to come up with his projected 2025 number. Same thing with the rushing attack with Ashton Jeanty. We had to put a big-time haircut, a big-time reduction on his rushing performance in college because as great as he was in college, I think we can all agree he's not going to, or at least probably not going to, rush for 2,500 plus yards his upcoming rookie season in the National Football League. So even with the haircut applied, you can see rushing grade in blue for the Raiders, passing grade in red, massive leap forward. And you'll notice that both of those numbers, both of those metrics now in 2024, they were below 60. In 2025, they're both right above 80. And that is an important line of demarcation in terms of if you're going to be a good football team or a bad football team. And here's what we mean by this. Let's pull up our next graphic here to highlight exactly what I'm talking about. So if you look at the NFL from 2022 through 2024, and you looked at teams that graded out at the same time with a rushing game 80 plus and a passing game 80 plus, both of them together simultaneously, you get a pretty interesting correlation to success. So we're going to start with working left to right on this graphic here. We're looking at winning percentage over the past 3 seasons in the National Football League. The Raiders, obviously not good, less than 40% of the games they won. The NFL average, of course, is about 50% when you factor in postseason games and things like that. It's basically dead on 50%. And then when you look at the 80-plus rushing and passing grade over there on the right, the winning percentage is about 65%, essentially 2/3. If you get a passing game of 80 plus paired with the rushing game of 80 plus, it doesn't matter any other factors. Here's where it gets very interesting. Could be bad defense, great defense, good special teams, bad special teams, good run blocking offensive line, great pass blocking offensive line, terrible offensive line. It doesn't matter. If you have those two metrics, 80 plus rushing and passing, then you are going to win 2/3 of your games. You're going 12-5 essentially in today's NFL. Nothing else seems to matter. In fact, I think all but one of the teams over the past 3 seasons that had an 80 plus in both those categories, only one team missed the playoffs out of every team that made that list. So you're talking about pretty much guaranteed success. If you go 80 plus in both categories and you miss the playoffs, we're not talking about, going 4-13 like the Raiders did last season. You're going to be significantly better. But even if you have an aberration, it's extremely rare to miss the postseason with 80 plus in those two characteristics. And if you go back to our first graphic, you can see that the Raiders are projected to hit that magic number, which means they're projected to have a massive leap forward in wins in 2025. Now, does it mean they get to 12 wins? Not necessarily. A lot of factors go into it. It's a tough division, but I think it's undeniable at this point that the Raiders, based on where they're projected to today, right? Injuries could happen. Geno Smith injuries. Hopefully it doesn't. Geno Smith, Jeanty, right? You could have some issues there if injuries occur, and that could obviously blow this entire plan up. But if everyone is healthy, if everyone adjusts and plays their game with their Raiders according to plan, then the Raiders will be a winning team. We're not talking about an improved team. We're not talking, hey, they may win 7 or 8 games. We're talking about a winning team and most likely a playoff team in 2025. In fact, you can make a really good argument that with an 80 plus passing game, 80 plus rushing game, they're more likely to win 12 games. We're talking 12 wins here than they are to win 7 or 8 games. That is obviously a massive change, a sea change for the Raiders, and this is something people are grossly overlooking in the context of the AFC playoff picture. The prediction right now for all the football teams in the AFC. Everyone looks at the Raiders and they say, they're going to be better than the 4-win team last year. They may win 6 games. They may win 7 games. Maybe things break their way and they win 8. And look, it's all possible. Maybe the so-called experts are right. But when you look at the data and you look at the correlation and you look at the law of averages with what the Raiders did this offseason, just in those 2 areas alone, running back and quarterback, rushing attack and passing game, this team, based on the numbers, based on history, based on recent performance, they're going to be a winning team. They're going to be a serious threat to make the postseason and maybe even make some noise. And folks, don't be surprised if we get to the end of the season. This could be a real shocker here for a lot of people out there. The Raiders could be in a really good spot to win the division, right? Again, unbiased opinion. We're just looking at the numbers, just looking at the data. This Raiders squad is a lot better than people think. All right, Miles, I'm curious what your thoughts are on all of this. But first, Raider Nation, in the comment section below, we're talking about the Raiders and what they're going to look like this upcoming season. So here's your chance right now, training camp right around the corner. Put your final prediction in for your idea of what you think the Raiders will look like from a win-loss perspective in 2025. You think they're going to go 8-9, 10-7, 7-10, whatever it may be. Now's your chance to get on the record here your prediction for the 2025 Las Vegas Raiders. Put it in the comment section below. And while you're down there, make sure you sign up for our weekly newsletter courtesy of the Substack platform. 100% free. I'm sure you guys have heard of it at this point. If you watch this channel, we market it all the time. It's extra content, 100% free. We highlight the best comment of the week. In fact, if you put a great comment in the comment section, you might even see yourself down there. So make sure you sign up again, 100% free. Link in the description box below. But Miles, enough from me. Over to you now. What are your thoughts on this latest involving the Raiders?
Yeah, Nate, I think the Raiders, like you said, they've just had a fantastic offseason. And we can say this ad nauseum and people talk about it. But when you really put the data behind it and put the numbers behind it, it's when it starts to make sense. I think people like that. I think, it's good to talk about stuff like, oh, we've added all these players. What exactly is that going to do? When you get down to the brass tacks, how is that going to affect this football team? And looking at the numbers you put up and, the projections, this is a team that's, projected to do something special as far as a turnaround. As far as teams we see in the NFL, it's not very often we see a team go from being, bottom of the NFL to a team that is going to be a playoff contender and more likely than not a playoff contender if you look at what they're able to do. And I think that's, just kind of a testament to what the Raiders were able to do. It's such a strong offseason for them. I didn't really think they would be able to pull it off in the beginning, but as things kept going, as they kept, throwing different pieces together to this team, everything started to come together. It really started to, look a lot better. And it's not just, for me, the offense. I think the offense is the main part here. And I think that is what is going to really propel them. But we talk about the Raiders, what they did. They had some great pieces on defense. They've got 4 young players, 4 rookies on this team that stand to be contributors. How often does that happen? You have Porter at corner is most likely going to start. You have the 2 wide receivers. Thornton probably going to be the starting more than Betch. But Betch, he looks good. I feel like he's going to get some playing time. He's going to be in that receiver rotation there. Genty definitely going to be a starter as well. But they've got guys across the offensive line they've added in. They got safeties they've added in. They got linebackers they've added in. Overall, this whole team looks very different and much, much upgraded. So I think when you look at the statistics you bring up, it's not too far off of what you should expect for this Raiders team. I think when you look at the numbers, how everything adds up, and you start breaking down the pieces, well, did they really add that much to the team? Yes, they absolutely did. If you look at what they were doing, I believe, if my math's right, it's about 8 starters added to this team that weren't there last year, 8 or 9, depending on how you look at it. So Kuntz could be a guy that wasn't there last year, so we add him into the equation. But this is a team vastly different. When you have 11 players on the field, 8 or 9 different players, that's a big difference. So this team looking a lot better. I think it's going to be a brand new Raiders team. And who knows? Maybe they go out there and blow everyone away. They could get more than 12 wins. I think right around, 10 to 13 wins would be a really excellent season for this Raiders team. And looking at the data, it's not that far off. It's not that difficult to expect that from this team.
Yeah, and over the past 3 seasons, there were about 18 teams that hit that magic threshold of 80 plus passing in the same year as 80 plus rushing, right? Over the past 3 years, 18. Only one of them did not have a winning record, right? So obviously, if you hit those magic numbers, barring just a freak aberration, like I mentioned before, you're going to have a winning season. You're probably winning 10, 11, 12, 13 games, and you're making some serious noise potentially in the postseason. Now, look, I'm not guaranteeing the Raiders are going to do that. I don't know if I even predict the Raiders to do that. My honest gun to my head, my gut feeling, the Raiders feel like an 8 to 9 win squad, kind of very similar to the way Pete Carroll and Geno Smith were doing things in Seattle at the end of that tenure with the Seahawks. So I kind of feel that's where the Raiders are right now. But if you take a step back and just look at the squad and look at the moves they made, like you mentioned, you're like, okay, well, they have decent wide receivers and they got some very promising young players that they added this offseason. You look at, of course, Brock Bowers, who's a superstar. Offensive line is young, but they got a lot of great pieces. When I say young, I'm talking about guys like DJ Glaze and, of course, Jackson Powers Johnson. He's a future star. They've got a star running back, most likely, in Ashton Jeanty. They got a quarterback in Geno Smith. Defense coverage grade was a disaster last season. Add Jeremy Chin. We talk about Darian Porter this offseason. This defensive backfield looks a lot better. Healthy Christian Wilkins, healthy Malcolm Kuntz, Max Crosby. Suddenly you look at this defense, and you're like, this kind of feels like maybe a playoff defense. And then you look at Geno Smith at the quarterback position, handing it off to Ashton Jeanty before throwing it to Brock Powers or Deontay Thornton deep or Jacoby Myers to convert a key third down. And you're kind of like, that offense could work, right? And you start to see all these pieces fall into place. You're like, the Broncos made the playoffs last season with a lot less, right? The Chiefs, if you look at the way they played, look, very good team, elite team, dynastic team, a lot of close, ugly wins, right? The Chargers, same kind of style with Harbaugh there, very ugly kind of performance, old school kind of football. There's a real chance the Raiders could be a lot better than people think. And when you just take an unbiased opinion and look at the data, it all supports that the Raiders not only have a good chance to be better than people think, it actually means that they should be predicted to be better than a lot of people are saying they're going to be. And again, unbiased, unfettered, put our opinions aside. It's just what the numbers say. It's just what the analytics says. And right now, everything right now, looking at it again, is pointing to the Raiders being a whole heck of a lot better than what they're projected to be.